one date, unless that you really want two different dates for the two works there, and the movement. Okay, so just give me that ID information at the top. And then, as best as you can, try and hit on what you see as the key points, you know, in terms of subject, style, and context. You do not have many dates to worry about for this final exam. And you know, instead of memorizing dates, you can think about context. Is this a movement that happened during World War I? Is this a movement that was responsive to World War I? If so, put it during the years of World War I. And that first set of dates is 1915 to 20. That encompasses the war and the immediate years after the war. Then we go to movements that fall between two world wars. Because time got tight, you people are saved. There's 3 movements that, by the way, I usually never really test anyone on, but 3 movements you don't have to learn in terms of specifics. So that's kind of nice thing. Now, anything between 2 world wars, which for you strongly is going to be surrealism, 1925 to 30. There is a flip side to surrealism. I don't think any of you, this would be a really wrong ID. Mondrian, surrealist. Okay? Mondrian is not a surrealist, of course. But his mature work falls in that period between 2 world wars. And he represents a very different impulse from the surrealists. He believes in an underlying order. They believe in an underlying disturbance, emotional disturbance. So the other person whose mature work, there's only 2 people you need to know a split date for, really. And that would be Mondrian and O'Keeffe. And it's the same split dates. They both had their breakthrough during World War I, so that would be 1915 to 20. They both reached their mature works. Her mature works are the flower paintings, the skyscraper paintings. 1925 to 30 will do perfectly for that. We do have, after surrealism is over, we have 2 things to think about. We have Frida Kahlo as a way to see a kind of later generation following after surrealism, and we were using her more to see modernism expand beyond this kind of European context that it is often given. And so we were looking at a more international modernism by looking at what she does in Mexico. And even though her work has surreal overtones, we thought we would ID it more closely according to her own heritage, Mexican modernism, you could say, Latin American modernism. And I would think a better date for her would be right near the end of the course, 1940 to 45. So think of her as coming at the end of the course, put those dates at the end of the course. Now the one other work you know is on the exam is Picasso's Guernica. The last work we take up, the work we will talk about the last day, and I can get through that. I think it's such an important work for us because we start with the centerpiece of this course, for better or worse, is World War I. The end point of this course is World War II. And this work is all about this sort of response to World War, 20th century World War. So that work will be on the exam. I just give it away. You know that work's on the exam. Because I want you to think about it stylistically. It is opening up to many styles of Picasso at the height of his powers. He can use whatever he needs to get his point across, and he will. He'll use a mix of Cubism, Expressionism, and Surrealism in that work. So there's a lot of ways for you to think about a lot of the issues of the course. So you will have to do that work. Let me help you date it. Do you remember the year of the Demoiselle d'Avignon? 1907, have I ingrained that in you? Think 30 years later, 1937, and there you have it. So it's a prelude to World War II. Prelude to World War II. So just think Demoiselle plus 30 years. And he was consumed with the Demoiselle in 1907. 30 years later, he's consumed with the atrocity that happened to Spain during the Spanish Civil War. All right. The only other strange thing in this course for this exam is the Bride Strip Bearer by her bachelor's even. It's one work that is both Dada and Surreal, It is one work that both straddles the 1915-20 dates to the 1925 dates. You can just think of it as, you can locate it as, it's basically 1915 to 1923 is when they were working on it, but you can talk about it as 1915 to 1925. And that should help remind you that it's Dada and Surreal, the lower realm being the Dada bachelor machine, the upper realm being the Surreal realm of the bride's desire. Okay, those are the only sort of stranger types of classifications. For the most part, everything's going to fit into movements, and you need to understand the concepts behind the styles. And for a lot of this, I mean, styles really isn't what describes style, right? So it's strategies. So you need to know the philosophy behind the is and behind the movement. So we'll be attempting to do that for you. Now we get this one on. There we go. So we start, and I think we're safe to start. We start the second half with a black square, a painting of a black square. And this is, of course, the work of Malevich. And so we locate ourselves with this work in Russia, in Russian Suprematism. It's going to be important for you, I think, to understand context, to kind of remember where these artists are from. It helps you remember their movements. It helps you understand the context. Now, with this work, we began kind of a unit looking at things like hard-edge geometric abstraction. And we started with a Russian suprematist who, in some sense, wants to break free of that world of the objective world, the world of nature, of things, of objects. And so moves to complete abstraction in order to do that. He makes his move in 1913, but he doesn't exhibit suprematist art until 1915. So 1915 is perfect for him. 1915 to 20 would be perfect. He is pre-revolutionary Russian art. So specifically, you could remember, maybe jot down by his name, that the Soviet Union, the Russian Revolution, communist revolution, happens in October 1917 during World War I. So that's its immediate context. Now, he is working before that happens, but you can already sense the kind of hated old order and the desire to transcend that. Notice that really since Kandinsky on, complete abstraction has been looked at, we've just begun, complete abstraction is looked at as a way to transcend the objective world, to get beyond it. And again, it's a sense of spirit rules over matter. So it's sort of a metaphysical attempt to get beyond that physical world. In this case, to leave that hated old order behind and to start to imagine a kind of new reality. And for him, suprematism is not feelings about things in the world, about objects that weigh you down, but it's pure feeling or pure consciousness itself. So he takes it all the way to a kind of geometric form and shape, because geometry is a type of purified language that does not have any kind of representational qualities of mimetic qualities of things or objects in this world. So again, this idea of geometry as somehow transcending the world of things. But for him, this was not a black hole moment, a dead-end moment for painting. He talked about how the black square has a static facade, but a dynamic center. So there's this sense of trying to explore these forms. Now, that's his first reductive move. And you could say this is the beginning almost of minimalism. The belief where less is more, where you reduce something down to its essence. And I think it's part of this movement of complete complete non-objectivity, complete abstraction, based on hard-edged geometric abstraction, is this idea of taking it down to an underlying essence. So not trusting the outer surface appearance of things as being where the truth of things lies. So feeling you have to abstract, feeling you have to dig deeper, probe deeper to this kind of underlying essence, essential truth. Now, once he takes it down to that kind of reductive abstraction, down to the black square, he does start to then expand once he has this new language that's not based on the basis in any way. And with red square and black square, we start to see that he starts to kind of complicate the geometry after this by tilting the squares. You should be able to tell him apart from Mondrian. Mondrian never did just a black square on a white field. He never would tip that square, that red square, onto the diagonal axis within the compositional grid field. He would never do that. So our Russians do. They like that tipped axis. It's that sense of a leap away from this world to another kind of vision. And, you know, they needed to take that kind of leap to have a complete revolution and build a new society. So it's a pre-revolutionary vision. Question? So what we get is a work that he takes down to that essential 0 point, that reductive point, and then he builds it in more complicated versions to come. All of these, by this point, are just called suprematist compositions. They don't want any associational thinking with things of this world. So he goes to this idea of suprematism and a kind of pure feeling, just pure feelings, the depiction of that, pure consciousness. How far can he kind of take this new abstract vision? Well, he reaches this point, white square on white, the first monochromatic canvas, really, that we talk about. And you're starting to really see a type of minimalism at work. It is a tipped white square on a white field. And to a certain degree, there is no further abstraction he can do at this point. And so we see this as a kind of endpoint for him. The year is 1918. That would be the end of World War I. At the end of World War I, the Communist Revolution has happened. Happens in 1917, right? So it is no longer the time for these visions that leave the hated old order behind. It is time for constructing the brave new society. And that is going to be true of a lot of movements in the second set of dates between two world wars. They attempt to build a brave new world. Now, we didn't get to detail Russian constructivism, but that's what would follow after this. We ran out of time for that. Okay, so think about a couple of things for context that were necessary. Russia had entered into trade with the West. And so now Russia is suddenly seeing modern art for the first time. Russia had also developed a modern art collection through Shukin, that collector in Moscow. So suddenly you could see a lot. They had 50 Picassos and 30 Matisses. So you could see some of the avant-garde. So this is a jump start for Russia. And finally, they've entered into trade. They see works starting to appear in Russia from the West. They kind of start to get into that dialogue with the bigger art world. And then finally, they have Crazy Marinetti, the futurist author of the Futurist Manifesto, coming to Russia not once but twice, and teaching them things about Cubism and Futurism in the process. So this is really Russia's first attempt at a modern art, and it is incredibly advanced in terms of abstraction. There are very few people pushing this level of abstraction right anywhere else. So you see the rise of abstraction in Russia. Stalin in 1932 will clamp down, and there will be no more tradition of modern art in Russia for a long time to come. So this is the rise and eventual fall of modern art in Russia.